welcome to Campus Connect. I'm Nozi Koshabalala. Thank you for joining us for another crucial conversation for critical moments. We're talking to Africa's leading academics, business professionals, and thought leaders, and we're tapping their insights for tools to help us navigate life's moments of crises. Today, I am more than thrilled to be speaking to a face and a voice that is familiar in academic circles, in business circles, in authorship circles. Her name is Professor Shirley Zinn. She's an author, she's an academic, and she has in various capacities led in boardrooms in South Africa in her non-executive director capacity, and is also the interim chairperson of LRMG. Shirley, it's such a pleasure. Thank you so much for making the time to join us.
It's so lovely to be here, Nazipa. Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm particularly excited about chatting to you because I think there's been some really interesting trends in how leaders have responded to the COVID-19 crisis. And the crucial question that I'm hoping you're going to help us unpack today is, what can the world learn from the way women leaders have responded to the COVID-19 crisis? But before we get to the big question, I want to take a couple of steps back, Shirley. You recently backed a book by putting a forward to it, and the name of the book is Managing During the Corona Vortex. What value do you believe that this particular publication is going to unlock for managers and for leaders in business?
Thank you very much, Nazipa. So, first of all, this book was written took about 14 days from concept to publication. And there were multiple players involved. There were captains of industry, academics, researchers, experts in their field, and they all just got together. And in a very short period of time, we were able to whip out this book. And the hope really was that we would give, a cognizance to the complexity and the uncertainty and unpredictability we are facing here, and try to get leaders to make sense of what's happening, offer some guidelines, offer some advice, and try to help them to work through the uncertainty of this complexity. And there are multiple chapters, obviously, written by each of these experts on leadership, on promotion of mental wellness, on effective crisis communication, on economic analysis and communication, and social and other business scenarios, and how to also look at legal implications and the labor law and all of those elements. What does it really take to be an inspirational, transformational leader at a time like this?
So that's a beautiful question that I perhaps want to mirror right back at you, Shirley, is to say, having engaged with all of the insights that these business leaders and thought leaders and experts have put together, what is emerging for you as the new inspirational leader, the new transformative leader that is going to be required for business in the future?
It's a fascinating question, and I'm watching it and reflecting on it every day as it evolves. But I think what is important here is that every organization has a vision and a mission and a purpose. I think now it's, the time has come to take that management speak of purpose and translate that into dynamic action that is going to promote resilience, equality, a healthy society, and an economy that is going to grow and develop on the other side of this pandemic. And I think those are the elements that are really very important now. I think, there are wonderful stories of generosity, of corporate integrity, of ingenuity, innovation that we are seeing coming through digitization. But I think this crisis has fundamentally reshaped who we are and how we are going to operate and behave beyond the flattening of the curve and the lockdowns. And I think that this is an opportunity to reshape so many of our ways of being, including our economic policies, principles, structures, and how society generally works. So I'm very heartened by what I've seen in terms of human centricity and empathy and resilience and duty of care and diligence during this time.
And I perhaps want to just build on some of that, Shirley. You talk about an opportunity for us to reshape and reset who we have been. And I want to come back to the crucial question, this idea that maybe, just maybe, there's something to learn in how some of the world's female leaders have responded and have managed the COVID-19 crisis. If we look at what's coming up in the media, we know countries like Denmark and New Zealand, Taiwan, even Germany have had a distinctly different response to the crisis. And what they all have in common is that they're all led by women. Are you seeing any particular leadership traits and trends and distinctiveness amongst women leaders at this time?
That's a wonderful question, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, Nazipa, when you talk about, these women in the countries that you've mentioned, New Zealand, Taiwan, Germany, and others. They've just led in such amazing ways, quite fundamentally different from some of our male counterparts, I do have to say, and a lot of their leadership is premised on empathy, agility, and collaboration in action. And we know that historically women have been undervalued, causing more males to be in these senior leadership heads of state positions. I went to look quickly at what the numbers are around that, and only around 10% of countries in the world are led by women, who preside over just about 4% of the global population. So while we want to say, it is a statistical anomaly when you have so few women in positions like this, when they are able to lead in this dynamic and effective and empathetic ways, we need to applaud them. That is the very first thing. The second thing is, I think, that we must do is that we need to reflect on issues around inclusion, issues around parity, issues around inequalities that we have seen and still experience. And I think that what we need to think about, what have these women taught us during this time? What are they telling us? And one doesn't want to oversimplify and further embed gender stereotypes, because we want to say that women are empathetic and more nurturing and more caring. For me, I want to juxtapose that and say, these are the new human-centric leadership skills that this world is going to need to move us post-COVID into a new world order.
So some fantastic insights there, Shirley. And I do want to get to what you've just landed on now, this idea that these are leadership traits that the world needs and that should not be locked only within or understood as feminine traits. But before we get there, there's something else that you've said. You've spoken about inclusion. And my sense is that in times of crisis, the focus on inclusion, the focus on transformation, the focus on belonging somehow falls away, because I think as human beings, we tend to actually gravitate very quickly towards our own echo chambers in this time, and we don't create the space for diversity of voice necessarily. Is there something that you would caution against? Do you think that we are becoming increasingly blind and deaf to the need for inclusion and belonging during times of crisis, and as a managing style as well?
I think this is one of the most important leadership qualities that is going to enable us to move forward in very different ways beyond COVID. It is quite clear that we cannot go back to where we were before, and that we need to take the lessons of what have leaders in the world done that have been successful. What are they doing differently? What can we learn across all genders? What are the skills mix that we are going to require to take the world, to take society, to take our environment and our communities and our businesses forward once these lockdowns and once the pandemic has given us an opportunity to lift our heads. And I think that we need to seriously reflect on qualities of leaders, leadership traits that are kind of wrapped around all genders, across the entire spectrum of genders, if you like. And this is going to require of us to be more inclusive, so that we don't lose those voices, that we don't only hear the voices of laissez-faire, authoritarian, controlling type of voices. We want to hear the voices of people who have empathy, who are, can show vulnerability, who listen to children, who are, soliciting the opinions of different people, onboarding experts that might even think differently to them. But that's the whole point. That is what we're looking for. We're looking for generosity of spirit. We're looking for patience and balance. Those are the skills that are going to take us forward. And there's no going back to those skills that have gotten us into a situation often of paralysis. And in this particular pandemic scenario, lives have been lost because people have tried to play by those traditional rules. And so the big exciting thing for me about leadership now is, how do we take a new set of leadership traits, a new style of leadership that says we're in this together, and let's make sure that we are exhibiting those styles, because those are the styles that we need to embrace to take us forward.
So let me merge what you've just said with the point that I had parked earlier on, this idea that there is a spotlight right now on leadership traits that were traditionally maybe perceived to be feminine traits, and your proposal that in fact these should be universal. And I suppose the question then, Shirley, is for us to get to a universal appreciation of leading with empathy, with inclusion, with vulnerability, with diversity as an example, we're going to unlearn some stuff. And we're going to have to almost break down some mental models of what we think leaders are and what leadership should be. Where would we start? What do you think we're going to have to break down and get rid of, release ourselves, if you will, if we are going to really become better leaders, because we're embracing a broader spectrum of what leadership is and can be?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think we are living through a time of introspection, of reflection, of lessons learned from this pandemic. It's a terrible human tragedy. It is a crisis of unprecedented proportion. It is, really charting waters that we've never been in before. And the most successful of these leaders are the ones we need to turn to right now and look at what they have done, what they have said, how they have behaved, what action plans they've put in place, who they have listened to, who they have brought in as experts. We need to take those learnings and we need to say, how do we package this, and we ensure that we are, living these new leadership traits and styles into the future. And I think it's a great opportunity for us really to say a lot of those traditional approaches are clearly not going to work in a future that we want to evolve moving forward. And we live in the emergent, so it's a continuous learning process. But we've got to hold these wonderful leaders up, men and women and other genders, and we need to say, what can we take from this so that we do not make the mistakes that we have made in the past, and that we indeed can create a better world. This is the opportunity that this pandemic is offering us.
Shirley, I think that's fantastic. And what I'm almost hearing you say is that when we do see excellence in leadership that is embedded in these feminine leadership traits, we shouldn't be treating it as an exception to the rule, or as in your own word, a statistical anomaly. In fact, we should be pausing and asking ourselves some deep reflective questions about, why have they shown up in this way? What has been the impact of this? And what can we learn from this? And I suppose my final question is a little bit more personal and tapping into you as a woman who has led in many boardrooms in corporate South Africa. How are you finding business is responding to you as a force in the room, you as a woman of color in the room? In times of crisis, do you get the sense that your audience is broader, or is the space of influence limited? What has been your experience?
I believe that there is a sense of wanting to hear more voices. there is a sense of let's appreciate what everybody brings to the table, that each one of us here brings a value. That's why we recruited to start off with. And that there is there's an openness to wanting to collaborate and build cohesion, perhaps in a different way than there was before. And I think this is a brilliant opportunity again for South Africa to not only reformat its economic systems and policies in terms of the way we, the systemic issues that we need to deal with, but it's a great opportunity to grasp the importance of hearing, the voices of people who would normally be isolated and alienated and on the fringes, and that we need to incorporate those voices. We need to be more deliberate in terms of how we listen to those voices. The next few months and years are predicted to be very volatile still. And we must not be lulled into a complacency around ticking boxes, which is something that we did before. We would tick a box. We would say, oh, we've got some women there, we've got some Black people, we've got some other genders, we've got this people that are, disabled, and we've managed to do something that is compliant and we okay, but question is, are we tapping into what those people can put on the table? Because if we don't, we're going to come up with some half-baked, approach to a very complex problem, and all our insights need to be on the table. And I think what I'm beginning to see is a reaching out in a different way. There's a sense that we need to we're all united against a common enemy here, if you like. This is what this virus has actually done, and it's amazing when you have that, to go back to our own sense in South Africa of our unity and our diversity, and how those two elements actually play out in our daily lives. I think that in this volatility that we finally found ourselves, we need to be able to hold both. We need to be able to hold, what does it mean to save lives? What does it mean to look after the health and safety of our staff, our clients, etc.? And what does it mean to develop the bottom line and continue to do that successfully? And how do we do that differently, taking the learnings of the last few months and saying, we made some mistakes, but this is what we need to do moving forward. And one of them has to be, how do we be more inclusive, and how do we ensure we're incorporating all the voices around the table and aligning to the new leadership traits, the new leadership style that is going to be required of us to step up into this new normal world that is evolving at pace around us.
So there it is. It's a challenge to align and respond to the new normal at pace. And for us to do that, according to Professor Shirley Zinn, is that we're going to be having to embrace a broader spectrum of leadership traits, and that is the new challenge for leadership. Shirley, thank you very much for making the time to connect with us here on Campus Connect. It's been a fantastic conversation. You've hit so many nails on the head in terms of speaking about the new management challenge, the new leadership challenge, and pausing to really reflect on leadership excellence amongst women and other genders, and not writing that off as an exception to the rule. And maybe, just maybe, the new world, in your words, that we might format is a world where women are not only leading 4% of the population, potentially much, much more, and they're not an exception to the rule. This has been a crucial conversation for Critical Moments. Thank you very much for making the time to join us. Remember to engage with what you've heard from Professor Shirley Zinn. What do you think about some of the comments and the insights that she's shared with us? Do you want to challenge some of the ideas that she's put on the table? We're going to be continuing this conversation not only here on our YouTube channel, but on our LinkedIn profile, as well as our other social media pages. All the details are below. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm Nozipho Shabalala.